What is up, guys? Welcome back to another review, another I'd Popcorn for that review. I'm Chris,
I'm Nick.
and today we are going to talk about the movie BlackBerry. It just came out 2023. It was directed by Matt Johnson, and it is based on a book with a heck of a title. It's based on a book by Jackie McNish and Sean Silkoff called Losing the Signal: The Untold Story Behind the Extraordinary Rise and Spectacular Fall of BlackBerry.
That is a title.
Uh, so it's sort of like uh, I guess like a docudrama comedy that fictionalizes the story of the rise of the company BlackBerry, and then ends with the fall of BlackBerry. And that tells you most of what you need to know about the movie, except that it's handled uniquely.
hmm
So, what was your what are your initial thoughts about BlackBerry?
I thought it was a really good movie. They did it really well. The comedy that was in it was just really, I don't know, natural, organic. It had me laughing at quite a few parts, but there is a lot of like high stakes. It feels like at some points for what it is. They kind of had like this meteoric rise over a few years, and then just everything goes sideways at some point.
Well, and I think they do a good job of, even though we all know in real time the story that BlackBerry is not a successful. You might not know that they're actually basically a non-existent company, or nearly a non-existent company at this point. But even if you don't know that, you know that like at one point, a huge market share of the mobile marketplace, and especially with smartphones and everything. And then we all watched that become like fade into obscurity pretty quickly. So even though you know all that is happening, like I think they did a good job making it kind of tense in the beginning and making it like you feel anxious for them and you want them to succeed, even though like they ultimately do, but they're so unsure of them, especially Jay Baruchel's character, Mike Lazardis. Like Mike Lazardis is so unsure of himself, and the only one propping him up or giving him any encouragement or anything is Doug, the co-founder, who's played by the director Matt Johnson. But but yeah, you just find yourself rooting for like the underdog the whole time, and
hmm
this guy is like super intelligent and has thought these things through in a way that's importantly different from the way all these business executives are thinking about the problem.
And they
And
really kind of like modernized or revolutionized what the modern cell phone kind of became with their product and everything.
yeah, I mean their initial plan is just to roll a pager, a phone, and an email device all into one system, and it looks like a it looks like a giant, like, to me it looks like a label maker, if you've ever seen
hmm
like the label makers that spit out a but it's it's a pretty giant thing with an attached headset and everything. It looks nothing like, you get the idea, the inkling of an idea for a BlackBerry, but it doesn't look anything like what we think of as a BlackBerry. And the name's not BlackBerry yet. They have a, I can't remember what the initial name was. Do you?
Oh man, I can't talk phone, something like no.
It's something bad. Every
Yeah, it was
initial
bad.
idea is not good. They're not landing on anything good. And the general story is that uh, in a way that makes no sense, somehow these two end up partnered up. So Glenn Howerton's character is Jim Balsillie, and couldn't be like more opposite of Jay Baruchel's character Mike.
hmm
But it, it, it's kind of the only way it could have worked, because this guy is like so aggressive to the point of having full blown fits in front of people when they do something that he doesn't like. But Mike needed somebody to be able to stand up to some of these people that can, you know, they make a reference to him being a shark at one point, and it's like, well, we need a shark because what's scared of sharks? Pirates. And it's a reference to like earlier in the movie they're talking about these guys are pirates, and the you're gonna get screwed over by these guys if you let them.
hmm
But
He's kind of like what I imagine a good businessman is, just like very thorough, but like insane about it. And I'm
and
sure it's dramatized, but he goes off the rails sometimes.
and I mean, anyone who's seen It's Always Sunny knows, like, you wouldn't be surprised at the levels that Glenn Howard takes the character to. But that's kind of like, to me, those three, Jay Baruchel, Matt Johnson as Doug and Glenn Howerton are just like the reason this movie stands so much apart from. It's just done excellently because of those three and the writing and everything. It feels like organically funny in a way that uh, I don't think they make a ton of good comedies anymore. So it's nice. Like these really shine a lot brighter in respect to the movies that are coming out around them to me.
Yeah,
So.
me too.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, and the thing about Jim is that even though he is like what they needed in that moment, and he does things that make it so that the company can rise like it does, that in a way had to happen. Or I mean, I don't know what the other way they could have happened was, but he did do things that were shady to get there, and it did probably put the first hole in the dam
Yeah, I mean, he did
that
things that
led to
would,
the crumbling of the company.
yeah, that would ultimately hurt the company. And even when before like the things that kind of, brought the downfall, he forced his like Mike and his people to work on things that like were seemingly impossible. But
Hmm.
at the same time, by doing that, they found a solution to it and kind of made all this stuff work that nobody else could figure out.
Well, they do. It is sort of like a situation where when Jim comes into the company, it's a situation where like he went from a very organized, being a big player in a very organized large business to wrangling like the most disorganized company ever. These guys are very intelligent, but they're like a bunch of children that spend
Yeah,
most of their time playing video games and like while at work, they're just spending all their time playing video games and you can see the intelligence there, but they have no guidance at all, and so they do need, there is a lot of like whipping into shape that has to be done, but the so I guess like the initial problem of because when we come into the story, it feels like it's a problem that everybody's been trying to solve, and and Jim, the character Jim, doesn't really fully understand how like prevalent, how well known this problem is, how many companies are working at it all at the same time, and everything. So when he goes to pitch this to, I can't remember who, a major, maybe Verizon or
it
a
was
major
what I
company.
guess it was the company that became Verizon. I can't remember the name of it. It was like American something.
Okay. Um, but when he goes to pitch that to him, like in that moment, something happens where I think they lose the prototype to show
Yeah,
them, and so and it's like at the 11th hour they realize they've lost the prototype, and there's no getting it back. They think, and so he just decides to go ahead and give the speech and say he's just alone on this and ignore uh, Mike, and it becomes clear through this that he knows so little about what's going on here. And then when Mike, it's a great movie, like point in the movie where Mike comes in. The people they're presenting to don't even know who he is, or they weren't introduced to him or anything. And he starts explaining to them how they've thought about this problem in a novel way and managed to solve it in this way. So they've already cracked the code basically. But uh, the problem, like, and I don't know the details to get into like what the problem is exactly or how they solved it. But I know that like there's a sort of a cap on how far this will go. So it works great until you've sold like more than 500,000 phones or something like
yeah,
that,
it's like 500,000 phones on the network.
and that's as much as the network can handle. And they can't just ask them to build more like they're not gonna bend at the whim of this company, so they have to find a way around it. And instead of, well, Mike's character even says like these guys aren't going to be able to solve this problem. This is like big, 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 big problem. And that's the moment where Jim goes around and just basically tries to poach all of the best tech guys in the
Hmm.
industry. So he goes to Google and poaches a guy from Google, goes to and and all these people that he's poaching from all these other companies. The way he's getting them to come on board is he agrees to pay them way more than he can pay them by giving them stock that's backdated to when their stock was worth less money. So he's cheating his way around and giving these guys, every one of them, $10 million a piece.
Yeah, and it's
But they saw
driving up the value of his company as well by doing it.
so they solved the problem, but in this extremely shady way. And it doesn't collapse the whole company in that moment. It does ruin everything for Jim's the Jim character, but the company goes on. What ultimately is the downfall of that company though is the iPhone. So you see the initial announcement for the iPhone, uh, and everybody in the company is watching it. And this is years and years down the road. BlackBerry's had all the success, and it's been nothing but success. I mean, the vast majority of this movie is success and this meteoric rise,
Hmm.
and then you can just see like the light fade out of Mike's eyes as he watches this announcement for the iPhone and everything they're gonna do. But he's like clinging to that last hope that maybe there's something about his phone that really it's not the touchscreen. People aren't gonna like that touchscreen. They want the click,
And
and
the whole thing about that too is when they sees that they're about to release a new part of their phone with the trackpad, where it's basically like having a mouse on your phone too to scroll through stuff.
it's all they added to it, and they think that that's gonna catch on, and every phone, the navigation on every phone is gonna be trackpad here soon, and then the iPhone drops.
Yep.
So yeah, but when he pitches the idea of this, not pitches the idea, when he presents, I think it is now Verizon, when he pitches Verizon with the idea of this new phone with a trackpad, they're like, is that all you got, a trackpad? Everybody else is just doing all screen. That's what everybody's going to do
Hmm.
now. And he has like sort of a little meltdown there, and it becomes very clear that he's in like denial of the destruction this company is going to come in and do. And
Well, and part of it is too that he's saying the iPhone, one of those, is going to be take up the same bandwidth as the 500,000 Blackberries.
right. And then he goes off on this derailed speech about the clicking, that people like the clicking of the button,
Yeah.
and that's what they're really attracted to. And if they don't hear that click, you got to have that click. And you think people are just going to tap on this phone screen? And so they say like, oh, in a moment of like desperation, when he realizes that nobody cares about your trackpad at all, you're off the radar in one swoop, one speech, and you're off the radar. Uh, he says, "Well, I wasn't supposed to talk about this yet, but there's actually a new one that we are going to roll out that is all touchscreen, but it has look at that click."
Yeah, like
And so
everybody cares.
yeah, like everybody cares, and so ultimately they do release a smartphone that's all touchscreen, but it's somehow they've integrated the clicking into it, which actually apparently made for like a terrible smartphone that everyone returned, and it like cost the whatever company.
Well, it wasn't the big thing about this too is Mike Lazardis was not wanting to send the products to China to be made. He wanted them to be made in, I guess, Canada or somewhere else. But at that point, they had to compete with iPhone, and they're like, we have to have all these phones. And the COO at the time was like, we got to go to China, and so they do. And then the quality of the phones is just god awful.
And there's a callback to earlier, because early on in the movie you kind of know it's going to be pertinent some kind of way to the story, but there's a moment early in the movie where there's like a pager, like an office pager,
Intercom, yeah.
and yeah, an office intercom, and there's like a low mechanical hum that's just always in the background, and everybody's ignoring it, but he can't ignore it. He's got to fix it, and he gives a little, he talks a little bit about how all the manufacturing, the quality's not there, and you can't ever go to China, and whenever anybody presents him with the idea of outsourcing to China, he brings it back up again that the quality is going to be the first thing to go, and yeah, so at the end, like, it adds a little extra weight to that at the end when he opens up the first smartphone that they released with all touchscreen, and he's messing around with it and then holds it up to his head and it's got that same hum and he's got to fix it, and the movie ends with him acting as though he's going to one by one go through this whole warehouse of all these smartphones and hand fix the humming problem. But yeah, but ultimately that phone was a catastrophic failure,
Yeah, I think
and
that's ultimately what killed the company is they had to pay a settlement to Verizon of $500 million because almost every single one of those phones was returned.
so just in the I think the beginning of last year, there is no uh, there are no more BlackBerry phones being released, and at the end of the movie it says like at one point they had 45% of the market share of the mobile phone market, and now they have 0% of the
Which was wild.
uh, um, but yeah, just overall, like it's it took something that could have been formulaic and boring and made it interesting all the way through. It made it the music and like the score made it feel like at times like an action movie or even higher stakes than it is, or it puts you in the shoes of the people involved because it's high stakes in their world. You know, a meeting with an executive or pitching a brand new product invention to someone. All these things are very important to these characters. So the music makes you feel like it ramps up the tension to 11, and the comedy was placed right. The comedy never like I don't feel like the comedy ever sucked any of the weight out of a situation. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
none of the dramatic weight was taken out. The comedy was placed the right way. Um,
I did like
oh, I
the
thought it was.
camera work as well. It was kind of almost like Parks and Rec or The Office, like somebody's hiding around the corner filming all these guys
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
lot of
it
the
did.
scenes.
And yeah, I just feel like Matt Johnson added a whole bunch of personality to it. The Doug character was great, like
Hmm.
because Doug was like exactly what Mike needed in in to found this company. But when they, there is like this dramatic element of their friendship falling apart. He basically chooses what is it that he ultimately chooses that kind of makes different. Like
Oh, I
he
think it was
says,
sending the phones to China.
I don't know. There's this moment where he basically says like, yeah, you don't have. I don't know what place you have at this company anymore either, or some. There's some conversation that's very,
Yeah.
uh, you know, feelings get hurt, and it seems like the friendship was pretty much over after that. At least in the movie, it seems like that's
Hmm.
the end of that. But I thought it was interesting because Doug got out and sold all of his shares at the peak in 2007. So he's like, it says he's quietly one of the richest people in the world now.
Yeah,
He's like a billionaire.
it's good for him.
So he got out. Yeah, but yeah, I didn't think of anything else
Well,
there's parts of the plot that we left out. So if any of that you think is relevant enough to,
a big thing that happened too that didn't bankrupt the company but definitely hurt it is Jim Balsillie doing that, hiring all those people with those backdated stock options. The SEC gets involved in that, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on here? You can't do that." And basically, I don't know. He didn't have to serve any jail time. Was kind of surprising, but he ended up. I think he had to cut all ties of being CEO with the company,
mm-hmm.
and they pay the SEC $83 million, which I
Well,
don't think was a lot for him. I think he was valued at over $1 billion, but
I mean, yeah, it still makes a difference. But the other thing is, uh, oh, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, yeah. Well, no, because he did all this under the nose of Mike and Mike not knowing what he's doing, and like there is a thing about they make a promise early on, like if you're gonna be my co-CEO, let's just never lie to each other.
hmm
Other lying, but we don't lie. We tell each other the truth, and you kind of understand that to be true for most of the movie. Like there's not a ton of shady stuff going on behind the scenes that you know about. It's just that this, but the one thing that is going on behind his back is such a huge thing. So when the SEC comes and questions him, it becomes obvious he's just now learning about all of this. Like that went on, any of those deals that went on to get people to come over here from other companies, that was all handled by Jim. And so they pretty much, I mean, I don't want to say throw him under the bus because it was entirely his doing, but
yeah.
they give him over to the SEC, and the SEC lets the company continue on in spite of all that. So that the only way they got out of that was, Mike took or Jim took all the heat. But
Which was deserved. I mean, it's from the movie's point of view at least. It seemed like he was the
and,
shady one doing it.
and there's a weird side plot where, and it's I mean it happened in real life, so it's
Hmm.
it's a weird side plot in real life, but where Jim spends a lot of time and energy and money trying to buy the what was the team?
The
Phil,
Pittsburgh Penguins.
Pittsburgh Penguins hockey team. He's a big hockey fan. Tries to buy the Pittsburgh Penguins in order to relocate them to Canada under the noses of the team. Very weird thing, and nobody want this movie, whether he is in real life or not. This movie makes this guy seem not like the most likable guy. I mean, anybody that can fly into like a raging, fit of rage at any moment.
Yeah.
Uh, So like none of these teams will take him just due to his character. Like he's got all the money that they need, and just he as a person is not who they want on the team. So even though they don't even know he's going to take the team to Canada, they're still like You know, we don't want you.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't really play a huge role in the movie per se. I mean, not to
Not.
say that it shouldn't be in the movie, but like it ends up just not working out. You know, the
Yeah.
guy tried to buy a bunch of hockey team. It just makes it so that when the SEC is calling over and over again, calling all these people asking about Jabal Silly, you know, nobody really even knows where he is. He's like on just constantly on planes, not letting anybody in on what's happening. So it takes him a long time to finally get them.
Yeah. That was a strange B plot, but it was just a real thing that happened, I guess, and it.
Yeah,
And then I guess we kind of skimmed over like the reason he was doing some of the crazy things he was doing because like they knew adding more phones to the network was going to crash these networks, which they end up solving that issue is because Palm Pilot was saying basically we should do a merger, and initially he said no, and Palm Pilot's like, well, we'll just buy all of your stock and it'll be a hostile takeover then, and he's like, well, you know what, okay. And but that's when he starts going and selling all these phones and putting them on these networks that are just going to
yeah.
crash.
There was a funny scene where all the salesmen, he's like, "You guys aren't salesmen anymore. What I need you guys to be go out and be is just pretend, basically pretend to be these like arrogant rich guys and just go be in public, be loud, be noticeable, and have your BlackBerry out and noticeable at all times." So it's just like this marketing campaign, basic like guerrilla marketing campaign, basically to make BlackBerry look like the most interesting phone, and the most interesting people use it,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't talk about the phone itself. You don't mention the phone, or you don't really do anything to draw any attention to the phone except it's out and you're constantly using it and being loud and obnoxious and everything. And the scene to back that up was funny, and you can see how it would be effective.
Yeah, I thought they had a few scenes that they did that, and I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah. Anything else that you're remembering from this?
No, I mean just go see it.
It's really good.
It's
Yeah,
good.
it's better than you can explain. You know, like if you just sit down and tell somebody about this movie, it's better than it even sounds to me. And it's an
Mm-hmm.
interesting story, but it's like they just handled it really really well.
Yeah. Well,
I'm almost tempted. I don't know if you what would you rate this movie?
I'd probably give it like an 8, solid 8.
I think I would also give it an 8. I'm tempted to even go higher, but I
I
think
know.
like part of it is just seeing something so new, like you know that initial when you see something fresh out of a theater, and also in the wake of like most comedies that I have seen recently not
Yeah.
being great.
And I wouldn't even
Um,
necessarily classify this as a comedy either, but it definitely has a lot of comedic moments.
yeah, enough comedic moments that it's like it's certainly not your run of the mill docudrama
Yeah.
type thing. And it does say at the beginning that this is very fictionalized, and so we don't really know to the full extent like how much of this is based on reality, how much of this is based on the book.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how many liberties they took from the book or from reality. We don't know, but happy with the result either way
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely.
So if that's all we got, if you guys like this, share it with your friends. Hit like down below, subscribe. The next movie we're gonna do is like for like a classic review. Um, is on streaming on HBO. It's called Chungking Express by Wong Kar Wai.
No, it's actually we're
Uh,
doing Fallen Angels.
oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Fallen Angels by Wong Kar Wai. Uh, so neither of us has seen any of his movies before, and all really well renowned. So I'm sure over time we'll watch them all. But yeah, starting with Fallen Angels. So we will see you guys soon.
See ya.